The phone call that would destroy Adana Chukwu's carefully invisible life came at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday that smelled like rain and regret. She jolted awake in her cramped Ikea apartment, heart hammering against her ribs like something desperate to escape. The Nokia, ancient, third hand, held together by prayers and electrical tape, vibrated violently against her mother's worn Bible on the nightstand. Both relics. Both all she had left. Adana's hand trembled as she answered. Miss Chukwu. The voice was male, cold, speaking English with an accent that turned vowels into something sharp. You will come to Busan, South Korea. Immediately. I think you have the wrong. There is a boy. Minhwan. 8 years old. Dying. The voice cut through her protest like a blade through silk. He has listed you as his only emergency contact. His only guardian. You will come, or he will die alone. The room tilted. Adana pressed her palm against the wall, feeling the familiar cracks in the plaster, the ones she'd memorized during countless sleepless nights since her mother's death 6 months ago. I don't know any Korean child, she whispered. I've never even left Nigeria. This is a mistake. No mistake. The boy speaks your name in his sleep. Adana. Adana who teaches him English through the computer. Adana who told him stories when no one else cared. A pause, heavy with implication. A car will arrive in 1 hour. A ticket will be delivered in 30 minutes. Everything is arranged. I can't just, who are you? Who's paying for this? Someone who does not like to wait. Someone who always gets what he wants. The voice dropped lower, almost gentle, which somehow made it more terrifying. The boy is dying, Miss Chukwu. And time, for all of us, is running out. The line went dead. Adana sat frozen, phone pressed to her ear, listening to silence that screamed louder than any voice. Her mother's final words echoed in the darkness, words whispered from a hospital bed they couldn't afford, in a room that smelled like death and disinfectant. Adana, my daughter. Stay invisible. Stay safe. The world is not kind to girls like us. The world takes and takes until there's nothing left. She'd promised. God, she'd promised. But 28 minutes later, a black envelope slid under her door with a sound like a knife being unsheathed. Inside, a first-class ticket to Busan, a visa stamped with approvals that should have taken months, and a single sentence printed on expensive cardstock. The boy trusts only you. Adana clutched her mother's Bible, pages worn soft from desperate hands, margin notes in Igbo that spelled out survival prayers, and felt something inside her crack. Not break. Just crack. Enough to let a sliver of something dangerous slip through. Mercy. Duty. The possibility that maybe, for once, someone needed her more than she needed to stay safe. At Murtala Muhammad International Airport, she boarded the plane with legs that barely held her weight. Found her seat, too comfortable, too expensive, wrong, and buckled herself in. Legos fell away beneath her. The Atlantic stretched out like a dark promise. She pressed her forehead against the cold window and whispered the only prayer left in her arsenal. Please God, let this be quick. She had no idea that quick was the one thing it would never be. Like and subscribe if you're already hooked, because what she finds in Korea will shatter everything. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and trust me, the twist coming will leave you speechless. Busan hit Adana like a fist wrapped in silk. Everything gleamed. The airport terminals stretched endless and spotless, glass and steel and efficiency that made her skin prickle with awareness of how out of place she was. Women in designer coats strode past on heels that cost more than her entire year's rent. Men in sharp suits spoke rapid Korean into phones, their voices clipped with the confidence of people who'd never had to beg for anything. Adana gripped her mother's Bible tighter and tried to remember how to breathe. A man waited at arrivals. Tall, maybe 35, with a face carved from ice and expensive indifference. His suit was black. His eyes were darker. Miss Chukwu. Not a question. A statement. I am Ji-hoon. I manage affairs for the benefactor. Follow me. No smile. No warmth. Just expectation that she would obey. She wanted to run. Every survival instinct her mother had beaten into her scream to turn around, get back on that plane, return to her small, suffocating, but predictable life. Instead, she followed the stranger through automatic doors into a Mercedes that smelled like leather and power and decisions made by people who never heard the word no. The hospital was private. Elite. The kind of place where dying was done with dignity because you could afford it. Minhwan's room was on the 7th floor. Adana saw him through the glass partition first, a small boy drowning in white sheets, tubes snaking from his thin arms, monitors beeping their mechanical concern. His head was bare from chemotherapy. His skin held that translucent quality of children who'd spent too long away from sunlight. But his eyes. God, his eyes. They locked onto her the moment she entered, and something impossible happened. They lit up with recognition. With hope. Teacher Adana. His voice was weak, heavily accented, but unmistakably joyful. You came. You really came. Memory slammed into her with physical force. 6 months ago. The free online literacy program she'd joined to distract herself from grief. The anonymous student who'd logged in faithfully every Tuesday and Thursday, username curious_owl_88, asking careful questions about English pronunciation, about stories, about a world beyond whatever cage held him. She'd never seen his face, never asked his real name, but she'd told him stories, answered his questions, made him laugh with her terrible Korean pronunciation when he'd tried to teach her basic phrases in return. This was curious_owl_88. Minhwan, she breathed, moving to his bedside without conscious decision. How did you? I listed you. His thin hand reached for hers, surprisingly warm despite the hospital chill. When they asked for emergency contact. Family. I have none. Orphanage closed. No one wanted sick boy. His English fractured under emotion. But you were kind. Only person who saw me like I matter. Something in Adana's chest cracked wider. This was why she'd been brought across an ocean. Not a mistake. Not a scam. A dying child's desperate reach for the only lifeline he could imagine. I'm here now, she whispered, squeezing his hand. I'm here. A throat cleared behind her. Jihoon stood in the doorway, expression unreadable. The boy's treatment is expensive. Terminal leukemia. Experimental options exist, but... He paused, weighing words like weapons. Mr. King has purchased all medical care. Unlimited. On one condition. Ice slid down Adana's spine. What condition? You meet him. Tonight. He has. Jihoon's joy tightened almost imperceptibly, a request. Every warning her mother had ever given her screamed in unison. Rich men didn't fly poor women across continents for altruistic reasons. Power didn't help without expecting payment. And payment, for girls like her, always came in forms that left scars. But Minhwan's hand was so small in hers. So trusting. What kind of request? Her voice steadier than her heartbeat. Mr. Kang will explain personally. Jihoon's eyes flickered with something suspicion? Concern, before the ice reformed. But understand, Miss Chukwoo, Kang Jae-wook does not make requests. He makes offers one would be unwise to refuse. The name hung in the air like a curse. Later, Adana would learn that name made grown men cross streets. Made police look away. Made entire districts of Busan's underworld bow their heads in respect and terror. But in that moment, she only knew one thing. She was 23 years old, a virgin by choice and circumstance, carrying her dead mother's Bible in a country that felt like another planet. She had no money, no connections, no way home except the mercy of strangers. And somewhere in this gleaming, foreign city, a man powerful enough to orchestrate all of this, visas, tickets, medical miracles, wanted something from her. Adana looked at Minhwan's hopeful face, then at Jihoon's cold assessment. When? She asked. Now, Jihoon replied. He is not a patient man. She kissed Minhwan's forehead, a promise she wasn't sure she could keep, and followed the dangerous stranger into an elevator that felt distinctly like descending into something she would never climb out of. The doors closed. Her reflection stared back, small, terrified, clutching a Bible like a shield that had never actually protected anyone. Stay invisible, stay safe, her mother's ghost whispered. But invisible girls didn't get flown to Korea. And safe girls didn't willingly walk toward men whose names made ice form in other people's eyes. The penthouse occupied the 48th floor of a building that touched clouds and secrets in equal measure. Adana stepped from the elevator into a space that redefined wealth. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Busan's glittering coastline like a painting too expensive to exist. Marble floors reflected recessed lighting that cast everything in amber warmth. Modern art, the kind museums fought over, lined walls the color of expensive whiskey. But it was the man in the leather chair who stole all the air from her lungs. Kang Jae-wook sat like a king on a throne he was too tired to want anymore. 46, Ji-hoon had mentioned in the car. He looked ageless and ancient simultaneously, the kind of contradiction that happened when beauty collided with suffering. Sharp cheekbones. Jet black hair swept back from a face that could have launched fashion campaigns if it weren't for the hollowness around his eyes. Those eyes, dark, infinite, carrying the weight of too many bodies buried in too many unmarked graves. He was connected to oxygen. The thin tube running beneath his nose should have made him look weak. Instead, it made him look like a predator conserving energy before the final hunt. Miss Chukwu. His voice rolled out in perfect English, accent minimal, tone like smoke. Thank you for coming. As if she'd had a choice. Sit. Not a request. But delivered so gently it almost felt like one. Adana lowered herself onto the sofa across from him, Bible clutched in her lap like armor that had already failed its last inspection. Her heart hammered so loud she was certain he could hear it. Jae-wook studied her with an intensity that felt like being seen through, not just at. Do you know who I am? No. Her voice barely escaped. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise? Relief? Good. That means Ji-hoon followed instructions. He leaned forward slightly, and she noticed how the movement cost him a tightness around his mouth, a controlled breath. I am dying, Miss Chukwu. A genetic heart condition that has claimed every man in my bloodline. I have perhaps 6 months. Perhaps less. Adana's grip on the Bible tightened. I'm sorry. Don't be. I've earned this death. He waved a hand dismissively. But before I go, I'm doing something I should have done years ago. I'm adopting Minhwan. Giving him my name, my resources, a chance at life I can no longer have. Her breath caught. Why? Because I can. Because he deserves better than dying in a system that discarded him. Jae-wook's eyes never left hers. And because I need something from you. There it was. The payment. The trap. Adana's stomach twisted. She thought of Minhwan's hopeful face, her mother's warnings, the 1,000 ways powerful men destroyed girls who had nothing left to lose. What do you want? Her voice steadier than her hands. Jae-wook was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his words shattered every assumption she'd built. I want to feel loved without fear. Just once. Even if you must pretend. The room tilted. I don't understand. Everyone who has ever claimed to love me did so out of fear or greed. His voice carried a weariness that transcended physical illness. My men fear me. My associates use me. Women see power, money, danger, never the man drowning beneath it all. He met her eyes with devastating honesty. I am going to die, Miss Chukwu. And I will die having never known if love could exist without corruption. You want me to? Adana couldn't finish. Stay here. 1 month. Let me feel what it's like to have someone care without agenda. He raised a hand, forestalling her panic. I am not asking for your body. I will not touch you unless you choose it. I want companionship. Conversation. Someone to hold my hand who isn't calculating their inheritance. Insanity. This was insanity. I'll pay you $200,000, he continued. Enough to rebuild your life in Nigeria. Enough to ensure you never have to be vulnerable again. His expression softened impossibly. And Minhwan gets the best care available. Experimental treatments. A future. Why me? The question tore from her. You could hire anyone. Actresses. Models. People who know how to pretend. Jae-wook's smile was sad, knowing. That's precisely why not them. You're terrified of me right now. You don't know my reputation. You have no reason to want anything from me except escape. He leaned back, oxygen hissing quietly. That innocence, Miss Chukwu, that's what I'm buying. 1 month of feeling human before the monster dies. Adana's mind raced. $200,000. Minhwan's life. 1 month of pretending to care for a dying man who seemed more broken than dangerous. I need to think. Glass exploded inward. The window shattered in a spray of crystalline violence. Gunfire erupted, sharp cracks that punched holes in expensive art, shredded furniture, turned the amber warmth into chaos and screaming alarms. Jae-wook moved despite his illness, yanking Adana down behind the sofa as bullets chewed through space where her head had been seconds before. Panic room. Ji-hoon's voice roared from somewhere. Boss, move. But Jae-wook was weakening, oxygen tube ripped free, face draining of color. He wouldn't make it. Adana didn't think. Thinking was for people who had the luxury of choice. She grabbed his arm, solid muscle beneath expensive fabric, and hauled him toward a door hidden in the wall paneling. Her hands found the mechanism Ji-hoon had frantically indicated. The door hissed open. She shoved Jae-wook inside, tumbled in after him, slammed steel between them and death. In the sudden silence, punctuated only by muffled gunfire and their ragged breathing, Adana pressed her back against cold metal and stared at the man she'd just saved. Jae-wook looked at her with something beyond surprise, beyond gratitude. Wonder. You. He breathed. You didn't run. Adana's hands shook violently. I don't know why I didn't run. His laugh was breathless, pained, disbelieving. Everyone runs from me, Miss Chukwu. Everyone with sense. The building's security system engaged. Silence fell like a curtain. When Ji-hoon finally opened the panic room, face grim, guns still drawn, he looked between them with an expression Adana couldn't read. Assassins. Professional. They're dead now. His eyes locked on Adana. You saved his life. She had. God help her, she had. Jae-wook stood slowly, retrieved his oxygen, and turned to her with eyes that carried a new weight. You can't leave now, he said quietly. They saw you. Whoever sent them will assume you matter to me. A pause, heavy with implication. You're a target, Miss Chukwu. The only safe place is here. With me. The trap had sprung, but not the way she'd expected. She wasn't a prisoner of his desire. She was a prisoner of having cared enough to save him. The safe house was beautiful in the way expensive cages always were. Nestled in the mountains outside Busan, surrounded by security that could have stopped a small army, it was all traditional Korean architecture fused with modern luxury. Paper screens. Heated floors. Gardens that whispered with careful wind. A place designed for people who needed to disappear without sacrificing comfort. Adana had her own wing. Privacy. Space. Everything except freedom. 3 days bled into each other like watercolors in rain. She saw Jae-wook at meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner served by silent staff who materialized and vanished like ghosts. He was unfailingly polite, kept his distance, treated her like porcelain that might shatter if handled roughly. But proximity bred familiarity, and familiarity bred something far more dangerous. You hold chopsticks like you're strangling them, Jae-wook observed on the 4th evening, amusement flickering across his usually stoic features. Adana glared at the utensils that had become her nemesis. In Nigeria, we have forks. Civilized tools that cooperate. His laugh surprised them both, genuine, unguarded, younger than his years. Here. May I? She nodded, wary. He moved to sit beside her, close enough that she caught his scent, sandalwood, expensive cologne, something underneath that was just him. His hands covered hers, adjusting her grip, guiding her fingers with unexpected gentleness. Like this. Let them rest naturally. They're an extension of your hand, not enemies to conquer. His breath warmed her ear. Her pulse did something complicated. When she successfully captured a piece of kimchi, his smile was devastating. There. See? You're learning. Learning what, exactly? Chopsticks? Or how to exist in the orbit of a man who should terrify her but increasingly just didn't? Nights were worse. Adana couldn't sleep. The silence here was too complete, too different from Ikit's constant noise, generators, neighbors, the comforting chaos of survival. Here, silence felt like anticipation. She found Jae-wook on the veranda one night, 3 a.m., reading by moonlight. Can't sleep either? His voice low, unsurprised. She shook her head, moving closer despite every self-preservation instinct. What are you reading? He held up the book. Korean text she couldn't decipher. Hanyongan. A poet monk. He wrote about love and freedom as if they were the same thing. A pause. They're not, I've learned. Usually, they're opposites. Read me something? The request escaped before wisdom could stop it. Jaewook's eyes met hers, dark, searching, finding something that made him nod. He read in Korean first, voice like silk over gravel, then translated. I love you not because you are beautiful, but because looking at you makes me beautiful. The words hung between them like a confession neither was ready to claim. Is that true? Adana whispered. Can love do that? I don't know. His honesty cut deeper than any lie. I've never experienced it. What about your wife? His expression shuddered. Seo-yeon loved what I represented. Power. Protection. She never loved the man terrified of becoming his father. He looked away. She died 6 years ago. Car bomb meant for me. I've carried that guilt ever since. Adana's hand found his before thought intervened. That wasn't your fault. Everything in my world is my fault, Miss Chukwu. Adana, she corrected softly. If we're doing this, whatever this is, call me Adana. His fingers tightened around hers. Adana. Her name and his voice felt like a promise and a threat. But Jihoon was watching. Always watching. You're disrupting the balance, he told her on the 7th day, voice cold with warning. Boss is getting attached. That's dangerous. I'm not doing anything, Adana protested. That's the problem. Jihoon's eyes were flint. You exist. For a man like him, that's enough. The words felt like accusation. Like she was the villain for being human. That night, Minwon's condition crashed. The call came at midnight, his experimental treatment triggering complications, fever spiking, doctors scrambling. Adana insisted on going to the hospital despite security concerns. Jaewook went with her. They were in the corridor when the second attack came. Not bullets this time. Knives. Silent killers melting from shadows, blades seeking flesh with professional precision. Adana saw the glint of steel aimed at Minwon's room. Didn't think. Threw herself between the assassin and the door. Pain exploded across her shoulder, hot, sharp, shocking in its immediacy. She screamed. Then Jaewook was there, despite his weakness, despite the oxygen tank, moving with a violence that belonged to the monster everyone feared. The assassin dropped, throat crushed, before security swarmed. Adana. Jaewook caught her as she swayed, blood blooming crimson across her blouse. His face, God, his face, transformed with rage and terror. I'm okay, she gasped. Minhwan is safe. You're bleeding. His hands shook as they pressed against her wound. Why would you do that? Why? He's a child, she breathed. What else would I do? Something cracked in his expression. The monster receded, leaving only the man terrified, furious, devastatingly tender. In the safe house's medical room, Jaewook dismissed the doctor after the stitches. Insisted on changing her bandages himself. His hands were impossibly gentle against her skin, tracing the wound's edges, applying antibiotic cream with reverence usually reserved for sacred things. You could have died, he whispered. So could you. Every day. Her good hand rose, trembling, to touch his face. We're both dying, Jaewook. Some of us just faster than others. His hand covered hers, pressed it against his cheek. I don't want to die anymore. Why not? Because of you. Raw. Honest. Terrifying. You make me want to live. Their faces were inches apart. His breath mingled with hers. The space between them charged with everything unsaid, everything impossible. The kiss would have happened, God, it was going to happen, except Jihoon burst in. Boss, we have a problem. Evidence just surfaced. The attacks, they're not random. His expression was grim. They're coming from the Choi Syndicate. Your rival. Jaewook pulled back, the moment shattered. You're certain. Security footage. Financial trails. It's him. But something in Jihoon's eyes flickered. Just for a second. Something that looked like guilt. Adana caught it. Wondered. Feared. Later, alone in her room, she whispered prayers into darkness that offered no answers. Minhwan was stable but deteriorating. Jaewook was dying by inches. Someone wanted them all dead. And she was falling in love with a man whose world was built on violence she couldn't begin to understand. Her shoulder throbbed where she'd taken a blade meant for a child. Somewhere in the house, Jae-wook's labored breathing echoed through expensive silence. The month she'd agreed to was becoming something else entirely. Something that felt dangerously like forever. The package arrived on the 14th day, wrapped in brown paper and secrets that would detonate like grenades. Ji-hoon brought it to Jae-wook's study, where Adana sat reading aloud from her Bible psalms, the comfort verses her mother had loved. Jae-wook listened with eyes closed, oxygen hissing softly, looking almost peaceful. "Boss." Ji-hoon's voice carried a weight that made Adana's skin prickle. This was left at the gate. No cameras caught the delivery. No prints. Jae-wook's eyes opened, all peace evaporating. He took the package with hands that had strangled men but now trembled slightly. Opened it with surgical precision. Photographs spilled across the desk like evidence of the world ending. A woman. Beautiful, sharp-featured, expensive clothes and colder eyes. Standing in front of warehouses. Shaking hands with men Adana didn't recognize but whose body language screamed danger. In one photo, she stood beside a line of children, young, terrified, holding numbers like auction items. The most recent photo was dated 3 months ago. Jae-wook made a sound Adana had never heard from him, something between a gasp and a death rattle. "No." His voice broke. "No, this can't." "Boss?" Ji-hoon moved closer, concern fracturing his usual stoicism. "Seo-yeon." The name fell from Jae-wook's lips like a curse and a prayer. "My wife. She's alive." The room tilted. Adana watched him rifle through documents beneath the photos, transaction records, witness statements, locations spanning 6 years. A child trafficking network operating across 3 countries. At the center of it all, Han Seo-yeon, very much alive, very much in control. She faked her death. Jae-wook's voice had gone flat, emotionless, the tone of a man whose soul was being excavated with rusty tools. The car bomb. The funeral. 6 years of guilt, of mourning, his hands clenched, crumpling papers. She orchestrated everything. Ji-hoon's jaw tightened. "Boss, I suspected. Had rumors, whispers, nothing concrete. I didn't want to. You knew." The rage in Jae-wook's voice could have melted steel. "Suspected. Never knew." Ji-hoon stood his ground. "I've been investigating quietly for 2 years. He gestured at the evidence. This confirms everything." Adana's mind raced, pieces clicking into horrible place. Min-hwan. He was one of the children she trafficked. Yes. Ji-hoon pulled out another document. He escaped 18 months ago from a holding facility in Seoul. Went underground. Found your online program, Miss Chukwu, and latched onto you as his lifeline. She's been tracking him, Jae-wook continued, voice dead, through his internet activity. When he listed you as his guardian, she saw an opportunity. Kill the boy before he can identify her operation. Kill anyone he's connected to. The assassination attempts, Adana whispered. They weren't about you. They were about Min-hwan. About me. She wants you both dead. Ji-hoon's confirmation landed like a tombstone. And she's been using your connection to boss to track movements. Jae-wook stood abruptly, chair crashing backward. His face had drained of color, but his eyes blazed with something beyond rage. Beyond betrayal. I mourned her. His voice shook. I built an empire on guilt. Became the monster my father always wanted because I thought I'd killed the only woman who ever. He stopped, breathing hard, oxygen insufficient for the emotional holocaust consuming him. She made you into this, Adana said softly. The violence. The coldness. You were atoning for a murder that never happened. She made me into a monster for nothing. The words came out like broken glass. For nothing. He swept his arm across the desk. Everything crashed, computer, lamp, priceless artifacts shattering against marble. His hands found a decorative vase, hurled it into the wall. Another. Destruction as the only language left. Ji-hoon moved toward him. Boss, get out. Jae-wook roared. Everyone out. Ji-hoon hesitated, looked at Adana with something like pleading, then retreated. They were alone. Jae-wook and the woman who'd promised to pretend to love him, standing in the wreckage of a lie that had consumed 6 years. Adana should have run. Every instinct screamed to leave this man to his rage, his darkness, his transformation into the killer everyone whispered about. Instead, she stepped closer. Jaewook. He turned on her, face contorted with anguish so raw it was almost obscene. You should leave. I'm dangerous right now. I could. You won't. She closed the distance, reached for his hands, bloody from gripping broken glass, shaking with barely contained violence. You don't know what I'm capable of. I know exactly what you're capable of. Her voice steady, certain. I've seen the monster everyone fears. But I've also seen the man who reads poetry at 3 a.m., who asked for love instead of demanding sex, who's adopting a dying child for no reason except it's right. That man was built on a lie. No. She gripped his hands tighter, ignoring the blood. That man was buried under a lie. There's a difference. Something cracked in his expression. The rage drained, leaving only devastation so complete it hurt to witness. He collapsed into her, 6 feet of lethal power reduced to a man breaking in the arms of a woman he'd hired to pretend affection. Except she wasn't pretending anymore. I've never let anyone see me weak, he whispered against her shoulder, body shaking with silent sobs. Adana held him tighter, one hand in his hair, the other pressed against his back where she could feel his failing heart hammering desperately. Then I'm honored to be the first. They stayed like that minutes, hours, time losing meaning, while the man who'd never been allowed vulnerability finally, catastrophically, broke. When he pulled back, his eyes carried something new. Something terrifying and tender. I love you. Raw. Honest. Hopeless. Not pretend. Not transactional. I love you, Adana, and I'm dying, and my wife, my dead wife who isn't dead, wants to kill you and I. His hand went to his chest. Pain flashed across his features. Jaewook. He crumpled. The heart attack was massive, immediate, terrifying. Jihoon materialized with medical staff, ambulance screaming toward the safe house. Adana rode with him, hand clutching his. Watching monitors spike and dip like his life was a commodity being traded on an unstable market. In the hospital, after emergency intervention, after doctors delivered grim prognoses about time running out faster than anticipated, Jaewook opened his eyes to find her there. You stayed, he whispered, surprised. Of course I stayed. If I survive this. His hand found hers weakly. Would you consider staying? Not for money. Not for obligation. Just for me. Adana looked at this dying man, this criminal, this poet, this monster, this heartbreakingly human disaster, and felt her own heart crack. I'm already staying, she whispered. Because she loved him. God help her, she loved him. And love, she was learning, was the cruelest master of all. Minhwan vanished on the 17th day, stolen from his hospital room like smoke dispersing. The call came at dawn. Jihoon's voice tight with controlled panic. The boy's gone. Security footage shows 2 professionals. Medical staff sedated. Clean extraction. Adana's world imploded. Jaewook, barely recovered from his heart attack, moved with a desperation that terrified his doctors. Lock down the city. Every contact, every favor owed, call them in. Find that child. But before they could mobilize, a video arrived. Minhwan, bound to a chair in a concrete room, terrified but alive. And behind him, emerging from shadows like a nightmare given flesh. Han Seoyeon. She was beautiful in the way poisonous things often were, sharp features, perfect makeup, eyes like ice chips reflecting nothing warm. The woman in the old photos had been softer. This creature was honed by 6 years of building an empire on broken children. Hello, Jaewook. Her voice purred through the speakers, Korean accent crisp. Surprised? You shouldn't be. You were always too sentimental. Made you predictable. Jaewook's face could have been carved from granite. Seoyeon smiled, cold and calculated. I'll make this simple. Trade the girl for the boy. She's the one I really want anyway. Why? Jaewook's voice barely human. Because she makes you vulnerable, darling. Because watching you care about someone really care is delicious. She leaned closer to the camera. I'll kill the boy eventually. He knows too much. But killing her first? Watching you break before your defective heart finally gives out? That's the revenge I've been waiting for. The video ended. Silence filled the room like poison gas. No. Jaewook's voice cut through it. Absolutely not. We find another way. But Adana was already standing, decision crystallizing with terrible clarity. I'll go. Like hell you will. That child came into danger because of me. Her voice rose, powered by guilt that had been building since Busan. He listed me. He trusted me. I'm not letting him die for that trust. You'll die. Jaewook moved toward her, oxygen tank dragging, face contorted with desperation and rage. She wants you dead, Adana. Trading yourself is suicide. Then it's suicide. She met his eyes, willing herself to be strong. Better me than a child. I can't lose you. His hands gripped her shoulders. I've lost everyone. My parents. My brother. Seo-yun, not to death, but to betrayal, which is worse. I can't lose you too. You never really had me. The lie tasted like ash, but she forced it out. This was always temporary, Jaewook. 1 month. That was the deal. She watched the words land like bullets, each one finding flesh, drawing blood he couldn't afford to lose. You're lying. His voice broke. You said you were staying. You said. I lied. She pulled away from his touch, from the warmth she'd come to crave like oxygen. I'm not staying to watch you die. I'm not signing up for that grief. This, us, it was a fantasy. Nothing more. The devastation in his expression nearly broke her resolve. Then I'll die having loved someone who could never love me back. His voice went quiet, defeated. At least I'll know what it feels like. He turned away, shoulders bowed, looking every one of his 46 years and then some. Boss, Ji-hoon started. Prepare the exchange. Jaewook's voice was hollow. Give her what she wants. Sir, we can't just. Do it. He looked at Adana one last time, and the love and betrayal and resignation in his eyes nearly sent her to her knees. If this is what she wants, let her go. I won't cage someone who doesn't want to stay. He walked out. Adana stood in the wreckage of the kindest cruelty she'd ever committed, tears streaming down her face. Ji-hoon approached carefully. You love him? Yes. No point lying now. Then why? Because he's dying, Ji-hoon. Because if I don't save that child, I'm exactly the monster Seo-yun is. Because maybe if I do this, he'll survive the heartbreak long enough to get treatment, to live, to, her voice cracked, to forget me. He won't forget you, Ji-hoon said quietly. And you're killing him faster than any heart condition could. She knew. God, she knew. That night, Adana wrote a letter she'd never have the courage to deliver. Packed her mother's Bible. Made peace with a God she wasn't sure was listening. In another wing, Jaewook's heart monitor beeped erratically. His doctor had given Ji-hoon the prognosis in whispered tones. The stress is accelerating everything. Days, maybe hours. His heart can't take much more. Time was a currency they'd run out of. And in some warehouse across the city, Seo-yun waited with a smile sharp as knives and a child's life hanging by threads spun from pure malice. Dawn would bring the exchange. Dawn would bring the end. Or perhaps, if God had any mercy left, the beginning of something that looked like salvation, even if it came dressed in sacrifice. Adana was halfway to the car when Jaewook found her. Dawn painted the sky in shades of wounded rose, and she'd moved silently through the safe house, letter tucked into her Bible, heart already buried beneath layers of protective numbness. Ji-hoon had arranged everything. The exchange would happen in 2 hours. She would trade herself for Min-hwan, and whatever happened after. Stop. Jaewook's voice cut through the morning like a blade. She turned. He stood in the doorway, oxygen tank abandoned, chest heaving with exertion that could kill him, eyes blazing with something beyond anger. You were going to leave. Without saying goodbye. It's easier this way. Easier? He closed the distance between them with frightening speed for a dying man. You lied to me. Told me you didn't love me. We're going to walk into death thinking I believed that bullshit. Jaewook, please. No. His hands framed her face, forcing her to meet his gaze. Tell me the truth. Right now. Do you love me? The dam broke. Yes. The word tore from her like a confession ripped by pliers. Yes, I love you. I'm terrified of loving you because you're dying and I can't survive losing someone else. My mother, my father, everyone I've ever cared about leaves, and you're already leaving and I can't. He kissed her. Not gentle. Not careful. Desperate and consuming and tasting of goodbye transformed into something that looked dangerously like hello. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead pressed against hers. Then let's not waste whatever time we have left, he whispered. Hours, days, months, I don't care. I want them with you. Minhwan. We save him together. You don't sacrifice yourself. We fight and we win, or we go down swinging side by side. His thumb traced her cheekbone. But first, let me love you. Really love you. Not pretend. Not transaction. Just us. She nodded, unable to speak past the emotion choking her. He led her back inside, to his room where dawn light spilled across sheets that had never held anything but solitude. They stood facing each other, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down like atmosphere before a storm. Adana's voice trembled. I've been waiting for someone who... I know. He stepped closer, hands gentle on her shoulders. We can stop. We don't have to. I want to. She met his eyes, certain despite the fear. I choose this. I choose you. What followed was holy in ways churches never managed. Jaewook undressed her with reverence, each revealed inch of skin worshipped with touches that trembled, kisses that mapped her like prayer. When his lips found her scars, the shoulder wound, old marks from a childhood of survival, he lingered there, making even her damage feel sacred. You're beautiful, he whispered against her skin. So beautiful it hurts to look at you. Adana's hands explored him in return. The scars that testified to violence survived, the two prominent ribs that spoke of illness, the heart that beat erratically beneath her palm. She traced each imperfection with fingertips and lips, learning the geography of a man who'd been touched with fear or greed, but never love. When he finally entered her, moving slowly despite her gasped permission for more, the pain was brief and insignificant compared to the overwhelming rightness of it. Of being connected to him so completely. Of giving him something no one else had claimed. They moved together, finding rhythm in the space between heartbeats. His hands tangled in her hair. Her nails scored his back. They breathed each other's names like incantations against mortality. When she shattered, he followed, both of them clinging to each other as if physical connection could somehow anchor them against the inevitable. After, wrapped in sheets and each other, Adana traced the scars across his chest while he played with her hair. I love you, he said into the quiet. Not the first time, but it felt like a vow renewed. I love you too. She pressed her lips to the place where his defective heart struggled. Even though it terrifies me. Good. His arms tightened around her. Love should be terrifying. Means it matters. They stayed like that until the sun climbed higher and reality intruded with Jihoon's knock. Boss. We need to plan. The war room transformed into organized chaos. Maps spread across tables. Jihoon revealed Seoyeon's location, an old syndicate warehouse near the port, abandoned officially, crawling with her people unofficially. She's expecting you to come alone, Jihoon said to Adana. She's not expecting an army. Jaewook made calls, decades of connections activated with simple phrases that made dangerous men agree immediately. By noon, they had 20 experienced operatives, weapons, strategy. I'm coming with you, Adana stated, brooking no argument. Adana. No. She met Jaewook's concerned gaze with steel. I'm not staying behind. Not anymore. We do this together. He studied her, then nodded slowly. Together. They prepared like soldiers facing final battle. Kevlar vests. Weapons training, Adana's hands shaking as she learned to hold a gun. Jihoon's patient instruction on where to aim, when to shoot, how to survive. In a quiet moment, Jaewook sat at his desk, writing. Adana watched from the doorway. What's that? He looked up, expression vulnerable. Letter. In case I don't make it. Wanted you to know everything I didn't get to say. She crossed to him, took the pen from his hand, kissed him deeply. Tell me after. When we're both alive. His smile was sad, hopeful, heartbreaking. Deal. As night fell, they stood together looking at the warehouse location on the map. Minhwan was in there, terrified, waiting for rescue that might never come. Seoyeon was in there, expecting victory. Adana's hand found Jaewook's. We both come back, she said firmly. Or neither of us does. His fingers laced with hers. Together. They moved into the night, armed with love and desperation, and the kind of courage that only blooms when you've already lost everything and found something worth dying for. The warehouse waited, pregnant with violence and answers, and the woman who'd set this entire tragedy in motion. Dawn would bring resolution. Or it would bring the end. Either way, they'd face it side by side. The warehouse smelled like rust and old blood and secrets that had fermented into poison. Jaewook's team moved like shadows, silent, efficient, lethal. Adana stayed close to him, gun heavy in her hand, heart hammering against her ribs hard enough to crack bone. They'd disabled exterior guards quietly, slipped through side entrances, spread through the building like an infection Seo-yeon hadn't anticipated. Minhwan was in the basement. They found him in a cell that was too small, too cold, chained to a chair like an animal. His eyes, God, his eyes when he saw Adana, filled with hope so pure it hurt. "Teacher," he sobbed. "You came. Always." She worked the chains with trembling fingers while Ji-hoon covered the door. "I'll always come for you." How touching. The voice froze everyone. Seo-yeon emerged from shadows like a nightmare achieving corporeal form. She was even more beautiful in person, designer clothes, perfect makeup, eyes like chips of Arctic ice. Behind her, a dozen armed men materialized, weapons trained with professional precision. Jaewook stepped forward, positioning himself between Adana and his resurrected wife. "Seo-yeon, darling." Her smile could have cut diamonds. "You look terrible. Death becomes you." "Why?" The word came out raw, stripped of everything but anguish. "Why fake your death? Why become this?" "Because I was suffocating in your world." She moved closer, hips swaying, voice dripping contempt. "The Mafia wife, decorative and silent, existing in your shadow. I wanted my own empire. These children." She gestured dismissively toward Minhwan. "Just products. Commodities. They made me rich, powerful, free. You trafficked children." Adana's voice shook with rage. "Destroyed lives for profit." Seo-yeon's eyes slid to her with detached curiosity. "And you're the little virgin who made my husband feel again. How sweet. How temporary." She pulled a gun with practiced ease. "Killing you will be the highlight of my year. You made me believe love died with you." Jaewook's voice had gone cold, the monster everyone feared finally surfacing. "You turned me into a killer. Made me build an empire on guilt and rage. For a lie. You were always a monster, Jaewook." Seo-yeon's laugh was crystal and cruelty. "I just gave you permission to stop pretending otherwise. You enjoyed it. The power. The fear. Don't blame me for what you always were." "Maybe." His hand moved to his concealed weapon. "But she showed me I could be something else." Everything erupted. Ji-hoon's team burst through doors, a coordinated assault that turned the basement into chaos. Gunfire exploded, deafening in the enclosed space. Adana grabbed Minhwan, shielding him with her body as bullets chewed through concrete. Jaewook moved towards Seo-yeon with singular focus. They fought like demons who'd once loved each other, intimate knowledge of weaknesses, strikes aimed at old wounds, violence that felt almost like foreplay. She was fast, trained, vicious. He was dying but desperate, each movement potentially his last. Seo-yeon's gun swung toward Adana. Time crystallized. Jaewook saw it. Threw himself sideways. The bullet meant for Adana's head caught him in the shoulder instead, not fatal, but he went down hard. "No!" Adana's scream tore through the chaos. Something primal awakened in her. She released Minhwan to Ji-hoon, grabbed the fallen gun, and advanced on Seo-yeon with a fury that transcended fear. Seo-yeon laughed, raising her weapon. "You don't have the spine." Adana fired. Not to kill. To disarm. The bullet hit Seo-yeon's hand, sending her weapon clattering. Before the other woman could recover, Adana had the gun pressed to her temple. "Give me one reason," Adana hissed, "not to end you right now." Seo-yeon's smile never wavered. "Because you're not like me, sweetheart. You're weak. Sentimental. You couldn't kill if." Police sirens wailed outside. Floodlights erupted. Ji-hoon's backup plan executing perfectly. "You're right," Adana said quietly. "I won't become like you. But not because I'm weak. Because I choose mercy even when you don't deserve it." She stepped back. "The law will handle you." Officers swarmed. Seo-yeon was dragged away, screaming threats and curses. Her entire operation exposed, documented, destroyed. But Adana didn't watch. She was already at Jaewook's side. He'd collapsed, the bullet wound bleeding but manageable. Except his breathing, God, his breathing was all wrong. Shallow. Labored. His hand clutched his chest. No, no, no. She pressed her hands to his face. Jaewook, stay with me. Heart, giving out. His eyes found hers, love and regret swimming in their depths. Not the bullet, the stress. Paramedics rushed over. Monitors. Machines. Frantic medical terminology that translated to one thing. He was dying. We need to move him now. Heart failure. Minutes left, maybe less. They loaded him onto a gurney. Adana climbed in beside him, refusing to let go of his hand. You can't leave me, she sobbed. Not after everything. Not after showing me what love feels like. You can't. His thumb traced her knuckles weakly. Thank you for showing me love was real. The monitor flatlined. One long, unbroken tone that sounded like the universe ending. No. Adana's scream shattered something fundamental. Don't you dare. Don't you dare leave me. Paramedics swarmed with defibrillators. Once. Twice. Nothing. Minhwan sobbed in Jihoon's arms. And Adana held the hand of the man she loved while his heart refused to beat. 3 months felt like 3 lifetimes. Adana stood before a grave in Ikit, Nigeria, clutching her mother's worn Bible against her chest. The headstone was simple. Her mother had never wanted anything elaborate. Just her name, her dates, and a single line she loved fiercely. Mama, Adana whispered to the earth that held her first love. I tried to come home. Tried to rebuild. But home isn't a place anymore. It's. Her voice cracked. It's a person I thought I'd lost. The weeks after that night had been purgatory. She'd held Jaewook's hand while machines screamed their failure. Watched doctors shake their heads. Prepared herself for a grief that would consume her completely. Then the miracle arrived. A heart donor, compatible, rushed from Seoul. Emergency experimental surgery. 30% survival chance. She'd prayed harder than she'd ever prayed in her life. And then she'd fled. Back to Nigeria. Unable to watch him die slowly even if the surgery succeeded. Unable to bear hoping when hope had always betrayed her. I'm a coward, Mama, she admitted to the grave. I ran because staying hurt too much. You're not a coward. The voice behind her made time stop. Adana turned slowly, afraid her grief had conjured hallucinations. Jaewook stood 10 feet away, alive and whole and impossibly real. No oxygen tank. No pallor of death. Just a man who'd walked through fire and somehow emerged breathing. She couldn't finish. Alive. His smile was tentative, hopeful, devastatingly beautiful. The surgery worked. New heart. New chance. He stepped closer. I've been searching for you for 2 weeks. She ran to him, crashed into his arms with enough force to knock them both over if he hadn't been ready. Tears and laughter and kisses that tasted like resurrection. I thought I lost you, she sobbed against his chest, feeling the strong, steady heartbeat, someone else's heart keeping him alive, keeping him here. Never. His arms tightened around her. I had too much to live for. Amma. Appa. They turned to see Minhwan running toward them, healthy and glowing, remission holding strong. He crashed into their embrace, completing something that felt achingly like family. You called me. Adana's voice broke on the Korean words. Mom. You are, Minhwan said simply. Both of you. My family. Jaewook pulled back slightly, reached into his pocket, and produced a simple ring. Not diamonds. Not ostentatious. Just a band of gold that caught sunlight like promise. You once said to make it fast, he murmured, kneeling before her with Minhwan grinning beside him. But I don't want fast anymore. I want forever. Marry me, Adana. Build a life with me. Help me become the man you saw when everyone else saw a monster. She looked at him, this reformed criminal who'd left the syndicate, who was building legitimate businesses fighting the very trafficking his ex-wife had perpetuated. This man who died and come back for her. You asked me to make it fast, she whispered, taking the ring with trembling fingers. But I want forever instead. He slid the ring onto her finger, sealed it with a kiss that tasted like new beginnings. They walked away from the grave together, Jae-wook, Adana, and Min-hwan between them, holding both their hands. The sunset painted them in gold and promise, three broken pieces forming something unexpectedly whole. His dying wish wasn't death. It was the beginning of everything. If this story touched your heart, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories that will make you believe in love again. And here's a question for you. If you could grant someone one dying wish, what would it be? Drop your answer in the comments below. I read every single one. Part of the journey is sharing it together.